The event is called How Can Agriculture Support Water Resilience in Europe? And for those who don't know, this event is organized by Common Land, and I will talk a little bit more about Common Land in just 1 second, and the EU Commission as part of the EU Green Week. My name is Milena Engel. I work for Common Land, and I will be moderating this event today. And I'm here with Yannick Schoonhoven and Miguel Angel, who I'll introduce a little bit more in 1 second. As I mentioned, I work for Common Land, and Common Land is a Dutch-based NGO that supports large-scale landscape restoration initiatives globally. And we do this, when I say support, we support landscape restoration in multiple ways. We support it by providing funding for projects, long-term funding. We advocate for restoration on a policy level, on an international policy level. We provide local landscape partners access to networks and resources, and we also try to give them visibility and show the amazing work that they're doing. So part of the intention today is also to provide some visibility to Alvelal and restoration work that is happening in Ireland. Yeah, this is why we wanted to organize this event, because it's very important, specifically for water resilience. Of course, there are many people that encompass landscape restoration, and this includes local NGOs, businesses, local communities, and also farmers that have to come together to achieve large-scale landscape restoration. And so today we will focus mostly on how agriculture can improve water resilience in a landscape. And just to provide some context on why agriculture is so important. Unfortunately, our speaker from Ireland is not here yet. So right now I'll just specify for Spain. But in Spain, as part of the restoration program there called Alvelal, and multiple organizations that are involved in this, 359 farmers have now started implementing regenerative agricultural practices. And while this seems like a fairly small amount of people for a large area that encompasses hundreds and thousands of hectares, even 359 farmers alone have been able to improve agricultural land by about 19,000 hectares. So that's quite a lot. So it's definitely agriculture has a huge effect on landscape restoration, and therefore every improvement that you do to agriculture is very important for water resilience on a landscape level. In any case, this was a little bit of a ramble. We have Miguel Angel here today, who's a researcher at the University of Almería. He researches agriculture and is also part of Alvelal in southern Spain. He'll talk a little bit about it. And then we have Yannick Schoon over there, who's a member of Alvelal, who's also a farmer and an educator who has her own project there called La Junquera. It's a regenerative farm, but also an educational institution, and you'll talk about it perhaps a little bit more in detail as well. And we have Rory Harrington coming in 20 minutes. He's in Ireland and unfortunately got the timing wrong of the event. He thought 2 p.m. Irish time, but he will join us in just a little bit. And he will talk a little bit about some of the integrated wetland integrated construction of wetlands that he's doing in Ireland. He's also a farmer there, and so he will talk about how he's incorporating the farmers in Southern Ireland to do this. But just before we get started, one last thing. If people have questions, please put it into the Q&A and not into the chat, because that way we can see the questions easier, and maybe Yannick and Miguel Angel will also answer some already throughout the event. And yeah, I think that is it. Apart from that, I think I'll get started. Maybe Miguel Angel, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what motivated you to get into this work, into doing research in agriculture? Yeah, just a little introduction about who you are.
Hi, good afternoon for all participants. My name is Miguel Ángel Gómez. I am agronomic engineer responsible of regenerative agriculture and research in Alvelal Association. And mainly, I'm more grateful because I am farmer. I am a producer of almond crop for organic and regenerative practice more than 10 years. Mainly in my actually or recent work, I advisor all farmers in Alvelal Association, more than 500 members, organize training, workshop, and help to farmers to transition, advisor to transition from conventional or organic agriculture to regenerative agriculture. Because I believe that it's possible to make a more sustainability and resilient agriculture production model with less environmental impact. Because now we are producing a model with a high footprint water or carbon footprint. I think is completely necessary to change the mind and produce food more sustainability. And for me, it's very gratifying for working to produce food very healthy and in contact with the people and the nature.
Thank you, Miguel Angel. Yes, some of you might have noticed Miguel Angel is originally also from Spain, so English isn't his native language, but you're doing a great job, by the way. So you're doing a great job. I just wanted to give people a heads up in case they don't understand something or something's unclear. Please feel free to put it in the chat, of course, and then Miguel Angel can also clarify if there's any misunderstanding. Yannick, maybe can you introduce yourself and who you are and what got you into the work that you're currently doing?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Yannick Schoonhoven. As you might hear from my name, I'm Dutch. Started working with Common Land 8 years ago, and then moved to Spain to do my thesis there on the transition to regenerative agriculture, actually, which is where I met my husband Alfonso, who was already living on his farm La Junquera. Now we live there with our 2 kids and 10 more people that have now their base on our farm. La Junquera is an 1,100 hectare farm, but I will tell you a little bit more about that. And one of the reasons I am doing what I'm doing is because I really do believe that here I can have the most impact. I see that in the area in which we live, education, which is what I'm mainly focusing on, is very necessary. There's still a lot of question marks about sustainability, about how to do it, how can we transition, which is a topic I find very interesting. And it's also a topic in which we in La Junquera are busy on a day-to-day basis, trying to figure that out, but also already having some success practices that we have seen that work in multiple places, and sharing that again with the people around us, but also teaching kids about how to have an impact in their own area. So that is for me a reason to get up every morning.
Thanks, Yannick. And just to get everybody up to speed so that we have some kind of common language of what we're talking about, when you talk about water resilience, what is it that you mean? Miguel Angel, maybe I'll have you talk about the definition of water resilience first, and then I'll ask Yannick.
Thank you. In my opinion, when we talk about water resilient, for us in our landscape, in our area, is being able to produce with the smallest possibility water from spring. We need to change the management to capture a lot of water of the rainfall because it's very important. And we need to do model with efficient in the use of the water and monitoring the crop water demand. This is the mainly concept of resilient water. And at the end, adapt the land use to the climatic condition of each territory. No can produce a crop or lettuce crop in the desert or semi-arid area. You understand the context of the resilience of the water?
Yes.
Okay.
Yannick, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I think for us, water resilience is a lot about how do we bounce back from floods or from droughts, which are increasingly happening in our area, and are doing a lot of damage. So how can we work in a way that we capture as much water as possible when there are floods, doing as little damage as possible to the infrastructure of the farm, either guiding the water to certain places, slowing it down, making that it can infiltrate. And in the case of droughts, which are also unfortunately increasingly happening, we are now in a drought already for the past 2 years with a average of 100 liters of rain a year, which is very little. Also, we are working on, okay, which crops are more resilient to these droughts, which crops, like, for example, we have cereals, and they're not very resilient to drought because they need a certain amount of rain throughout the year. But then you have aromatics, which are doing really great because with the stress of the drought, they actually get more essential oil. So those, even in a very bad year, are doing quite well. Of course, you do need the minimum amount of rain. So we're constantly figuring out, okay, can we still produce? But also, can we change from annual crops that require constant tilling to perennial crops that don't need that amount of tilling, and that can do with maybe one little tillage a year and maybe having the sheep in and therefore not touching the soil anymore. So we're really trying to figure out ways to work as well, both with the droughts and with the floods when they come, because at some point you have maybe 200 liters in a few days, which is horrible, but also increasingly happening.
So what I hear kind of from both of you guys, that for you both in maybe different ways, water resilience is really about ensuring the supply of water for your crops or for the landscape, and also making sure that it's used in an efficient way. Okay, well, now that we kind of have an understanding of what water resilience encompasses, maybe I will ask you, Miguel Angel, to present a little bit about the work that you're actually doing, Alvelal. I will share the presentation you have prepared, and you just let me know when to continue. Yeah?
And share the presentation.
Yes.
But for the last conversation, I completely agree with Yannick, because an example of resilience is adapt the land use, the crop, change cereal crop to aromatic plant, because are more resilient or demand low water than cereal, and we have a production and a value. Okay, you can share.
So a lot of the day-to-day work or sort of experimentation really goes along with how do you adapt to make sure that your your land is resilient, and part of that also means adapting to the amount of water, the quantity, quality that is available.
But the chain We need time to change the main, to training to the farmer, and demonstrated that is available to change the cereal crops for aromatic plant, and what is the harvest, what is the yield, and the price, and developing the business case. But we need or we know that is available.
All right, so I will share your presentation. Can you see it?
But this is not the first slide.
Yes. There you go.
Okay. The next slide. We are talking about the Alvelal territory. We are an initiative working for the restoration of around 1 million hectares of land. We are an association with more than 500 members that promote the regenerative or landscape through the restoration of the ecosystem, regenerative agriculture, and economic dynamization. We are located in the southeast of Spain, one of the most arid area with average of rainfall no more than 250 or 300 liters per year. Is the low rainfall area in Europe. And in this area is home to the largest area of rain-fed almond crop in the world, with more than 140,000 hectares of almond crop. Next slide. And in this area, the mainly problem is low content of organic matter, a lot of erosion of the soil. The average in this area, with the slope of the soil, with the slope of the capacity of infiltration of the soil, the average of the loss between 10 or 20 tons per hectare and year. And we need to a lot of challenge, because the climate challenge change, there are torrential rain and erosion. And we need to change this small habit or a lot of tillage, monoculture, or overexploitation of aquifer. We need to change. Next slide. For example, this is a example of bad practice, a lot of tillage in slope, loss erosion, etc. But this is the conventional management in the territory. Next slide. And the challenge of the new practice that we need to implement is, for example, developing plant material variety and rootstock that are less water demanding and more adapted to arid conditions. It's completely necessary if we have low available water. We're not implementing a crop with a lot of demand of the water. We need to select the variety or the material that now demand less water, and research and development other new material, okay? And avoid the bare soil. We need to cover soil, okay? Next. For example, keep the all infrastructure to avoid the erosion. And you can see in this cereal crop. Next. For example, you can see aquí a comparison between two pictures. In the left, after infrastructure keep with the stone and contour crop to reduce erosion, and now new plantation in favor of erosion. We lost a lot of soil. We need to avoid this change of the management of bad practice. Next. And the solution or some management that we need to implement it, if at the beginning change the main, the vision of the people, and change the model of the regenerative agriculture production. And some of good practice that we implementing in this area is reduce minimum tillage, excuse me, not more than two tillage per year, cover crop, green manure, organic matter, and this all management with the objective to increase the capacity of the infiltration of the soil to retain more or capture more rainwater. Next, for example, in this picture, you can see a cover crop in a temporal time in the year between October, November until April, because then there are a big competition for the water with the almond crop. We need to control with machine or with livestock. Next. And with the hydrologic management, for example, here with implementing a holistic management with swales and cover crop combined, and we can reduce the erosion and cap the water. Next step. This is other example with this swale. We can distribute better the rainwater and available for the crop, more resilient to this arid condition. This is the sample after the rainwater avoid erosion, and this water is available for the next cycle crop. Next, or for example, in other time, in other farm, this is the water is available for the crop. Next, is the same management. Next, and other combine other good practice is combine the holistic management with soil, for example, with cover crop and some tillage, but with this new machine called paraplow, because we can increase a lot of the rate of the infiltration water into the soil. For example, this is the last project that I show here, that we compare the one farm with tillage, is the control farm, only the management with cover crop, and cover crop with this machine with the paraplow. And you can see in the data, we can increase significantly the range of the infiltration water into the soil. Next, please. And other practice that we need to keep is the traditional Arabic irrigation system, because aquifer recar, this water come from rainwater or the mountain, don't not over improve biodiversity, is only in a small irrigation area in traditional vegas in each village, is not a big area, and keep a stable crop harvest. Next. And realize implementing pond in a natural area or in agriculture area, because with this water improve biodiversity and repair aquifers. Next. And is enough. Only this slide is an example of bad practice. For us, we try to change the main to the farm, but the government allow this project in aquifer drainage plan for reduce the lowering the water level. This is not resilient project, but combined with in the territory. For this reason, we need to developing policies with common sense. Thank you for all and your attention.
Thank you, Miguel Angel. Super, very well done. I thought it was very clear. Thank you so much for the presentation, for giving the context of what is happening in southern Spain. And you, I think, provided a lot of examples already of what you're doing. I had one question though that I didn't quite understand before we go to Unique, which is you showed this area with the almond trees, I think, and then some cover crop, and you mentioned that the cover crop actually provides some competition sometimes with the trees. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
So in order to um, decrease the competition, you actually introduce livestock so that they take up less water, but still, so there's somehow an optimum. It is good to have cover crop so that the soil isn't bare, but also you need to manage it by having some livestock there to decrease the competition for the agricultural produce. Is that correct?
Yes, excuse me for the speed, but it is very complicated in a small minute explain a big project with this. But the cover crop, green manure or natural cover crop, is completely necessary implementing in this area. But we step by step. We can implementing a few months each year, for example, between October, November until March, April, in all surface, or we combine alternative line, one with cover crop and other line in the farm with tillage. But it's completely necessary to implement it and look the minimum time to competition with the mainly crop, olive, pistachios, or almond. But we need to implement it.
Thanks, Miguel Angel. For those who who weren't here earlier, I'd mentioned that Rory Harrington is also joining us from Ireland. He has joined now. Rory, before I allow you to introduce yourself, I might just ask Yannick to present her project first, and then after her presentation, I will introduce you again, so people know who you are. But I'm glad you were able to join us for the webinar. All right, Yannick, I will share the presentation.
Perfect, thank you.
Wait one moment.
So, yes, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about La Junquera. La Junquera is a 1,100 hectare farm with regenerative organic practices based in the Alvelal territory. We are at 1,100 meters altitude with an average of 300 liters of rain a year, which is very little. And can you go to the next one? Yes, we started off 10 years ago with only cereals in conventional, and now we have everything in organic, and we are practicing regenerative agriculture in the whole farm. And we have over 20 crops at the moment. Besides that, we also started with cow herding, and we have 150 cows under holistic management walking throughout the farm, always in the outdoors. And also, I think something that's quite interesting, what happened in our case is that as we started to implement regenerative organic practices, we went to 20 crops, but also we went from 1 full-time employee to 20 full-time employees. So also for everyone who always says like, yeah, you cannot make a living. In our case, at least that is totally not true, because now we hire a lot more people than we could before. Besides that, in the next slide, you'll see that we are implementing many different practices in many different fields. So every field has its own requirements, especially when we're thinking about what it means to be water resilient. we need to see what are the problems in each of the fields that we have, and they are not all similar. So in our more sandy soils, swales or these contour trenches, they don't necessarily make the most sense because the infiltration is quite okay. And then we might go more for vegetation strips. In other areas where we have cereals or other not tree crops, we can have the cows in at a certain moment of the year. But when we talk about the almonds, we have to think about more about sheep that we get in from a neighbor, or maybe no animals, because the cows, they tend to they like to fight the almond tree, and that means a lot of damage. Yeah, so some other things that we do a lot of ponds. So we've built around 60 ponds throughout our farm, which is super interesting because besides, of course, that it collects the rainwater when it comes, really slows down the speed of it, lets it infiltrate a lot in the aquifer. It really creates microhabitats, and that's something that you can see on the right corner. Is within a week we have frogs, we have dragonflies, we have a lot of animals coming to drink, we have a lot of birds, we even see ducks, and that goes super fast. Even though not all of our ponds have water all year round, they all have their unique space in the ecosystem, which is very different from the dry lands around. And that is something that is, yeah, it's just really nice to see that is possible in such a short time. Some other practices that we do to be more resilient is in the swales and the key lines. They work very well, but of course, when you have an extreme flooding situation, yeah, nothing can stop that water. So within boundaries, that works very well. But not when you have, let's say, 200 liters in a week. Then it doesn't hold. Then again, it is also something that is very hard to plan for on a farm, because that generally should not happen in many, many years. And you would have to build such big infrastructures that that probably isn't worth it financially. So you always have to make this compromise between this will hold for X amount of time and is not too much of an investment, so I can actually do that investment. We see that with swales, it's generally a really good investment, not only because you make a swale, but also because it means that the tractor drivers have to follow the contour line, which if there's no swale, they might still try to get downhill just because it's a lot more comfortable and easy. But with these swales, people have to do this whole curvy thing. And therefore, you stop the water even more, because when that goes downhill, you have all these little lines from the tillage that this water has to kind of go over bit by bit. At the moment, we are busy with a very big watershed project because we've seen that our river that starts in our farm is drying up because of intensive agriculture in our area, unfortunately. So we are now busy with working with the farmers around our farm to protect this river and to implement together more large-scale water resilience practices. Oh yeah.
Stop sharing. And I'm gonna deviate a little bit from the questions that I prepared, but now you've got me curious. So I'm just gonna ask you one question, Yannick, before we go to Rory. Of course, water resilience is not just something that you can change on one farm. Of course, you can't be responsible for how the entire southern Spain water resilience is based on just the things that you're doing. But I am curious to know if you have been able to see any improvements just on a very local level already from some of these practices that you've been implementing, and what those are.
Yeah, so what some context around our farm, unfortunately, because of more strict regulations around the coast, a lot of intensive farms have gotten to the altiplano and are now using a lot of more or less illegal, sometimes water for their lettuce farm. So that is increasing on a very fast rate. So we're fighting something pretty big here. But on a more small scale, we do see that organic matter is increasing. We see in the areas where we build a lot of ponds that the area around these ponds that has green grass all year round is moving up a little bit each year. So that means that the wetland that's kind of created around this pond area is increasing. Unfortunately, on a larger scale, what we see with the aquifers, as we are part of a larger watershed, is that these bigger aquifers are polluted, increasingly contaminated with nitrates, and emptied on a very high speed, which indeed we need to think bigger than just our farm, and we also need to think about the governance, because we can try to put it back in, but if someone else takes it back out as fast as we put it back in, then what's the point, right? So therefore, we need to work together with the whole system and not just one or two farms. We need local government, we need the water bodies, we need everyone to understand that this is a very big issue that we need to have regulation for.
Thanks. Okay, so now we were in southern Spain, which is a very dry region, and Spain typically, I think, deals with drought and not enough water. And now we're going to move to a different region, which is Southern Ireland. Rory, can you talk a little bit about, just keep it short, who are you, what are you doing in Southern Ireland, and specifically what are you doing with your work at VESI Environment with the integrated constructed wetlands when it comes to water resilience? Can you, yeah. Can you hear us? You might have to unmute. I see you're currently muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We
Okay.
cannot see you though. Your camera is off.
Okay. All right. So I'm a ghost. Yeah, my background, and it goes back many years, is an applied ecologist. I'm originally a forester, then a wildlife ecologist, geneticist, and I live in the country. We live on our own farm and previously on another farm, which was mainly forested. So it was very evident for all my career that water problems are ubiquitous, are everywhere. And how might I address this? Because I felt compelled to do something. With my background, I've had a very privileged academic and scientific-based background to do something. And over the last 40 years, I've been developing this concept of integrated constructed wetlands. The integrated element is that water management is primarily a land use issue. And how do you address the land use in an integrated way? So that's really the core. You have to understand the soils, the topography, the flows, and what might happen at the end of the system, because we are looking at surface flow as being the dominant one. So we see this as a land use or a land management issue, which applies across, even in towns and cities. We have several of our systems working now in Dublin City, in parks and the like, across all aspects of agriculture, in industry. For, I suppose, the best one would be the mining industry. And we have done this in Spain and Portugal, but also here in Ireland. And for the imperative that we cannot allow our waters to become polluted. We have seen a major reduction in the surface waters, not only the freshwater surface waters, but those on the coast and so forth. So how do we go about it? And we go about this through providing enough space on the land for water to reside. And it's colonized by appropriate plant, or what we call helophyte species. These are emergent plants. Typical would be typha, which is a commonly used plant in our part of the world, and indeed almost all over. So that is really the basis. There is no limit other than the landowners address the need to use their land or to buy land, or the government to acquire land to treat water. It does this economically far superiorly to any of the other wastewater treatment systems around. And it has been accepted by government services. Indeed, I was responsible for the writing of a guidance document and how it might be applied. So, in addition to that, to buy into this, it's important that things look well. And so we apply Vitruvian principles, that is, of function, durability, and aesthetics in all our systems. So many people walking the wetlands that we have created don't even realize that they've been constructed or put in by artificial means. And that really is that and water quality at the end are actually the key benefits of what we deliver. In addition to that, the soils are another aspect of how they might be constructed. You cannot let the water grade or decant down into the soil. One has to hold the water back. And not all water will be held back, but 1 by 10 to the power of -8 meters per second, which is less than a millimeter per day of ingression, is what we address. And we can do that by the management of the appropriate soils. You need adequate area. It is very much dependent upon the area allocated. And from an agricultural point of view, we find here in Ireland that about 1% of a farm dedicated to this practice is usually enough to service all aspects of farming. That would include the effluent from cowsheds, washing parlours, yard runoff, and the like. And that's a major contribution by both the farmer and, if you like, a commitment by society if we can offer up about 1% of the land. Other key elements are configuration. It's not just one big wetlands area, it's a number. Optimum number is between 3 and 4 cells, if you like, or individual wetland components. The length to width ratio, well, almost a circle is the optimum. But one, of course, can make them more long than they are wide. They must be of shallow depth. We are looking at systems that are generally less than 10 centimeters deep, okay? That is to allow for optimal growth and also optimal treatment. So we started, as I said, roughly 40 years ago But in actually delivery, we are looking to 1996 when the first farmyard effluent was treated. And that's still working today. Very fine. It even has some woodland associated with it. But the primary factor is that it is excellent quality water after a period of time, which is quite considerable. We're looking at, we include all water, and I've even designed systems which take all water vectored effluent in terms of animal slurries. And that's a huge factor in terms of managing the enormous amount of energy and capital that is put into capture of animal manures and spreading on the land, which is a major factor, especially in high rainfall areas, as in Ireland and Britain and Northwestern Europe. But the primary approach has been to address just yard water management. But I don't know how thorough and widely experienced you are in farmyard management. And I've seen and been working with colleagues in the Netherlands, in Denmark, in Finland, in Britain, and in Ireland. And I can tell you there's always slippage. And one of the big advantages of this approach is that all water is intercepted, and treated, and can be testable at the very end of the system. So one is looking at verification, which is a huge factor. So regulation, it cannot be overcome. You either apply and function, or you don't. And in terms of what we're not just talking about nitrogen pollution or phosphorus pollution, but even emergent pollutants such as heavy metals and pathogens are intercepted. And we've published on this and delivered on that in terms of, yes, they are most effective right across the board. And I just wonder if there's anything to compete with. I don't think there is, because this is a natural system which nature has allowed us to engage with. So importantly, applied collectively within catchments, this integrated constructed wetland approach delivers sustained protection of receiving waters. And that's the key. We have seen a deterioration in our country of rivers and streams and lakes. And this is one way to address that. And indeed, on an earlier occasion, I've spoken in the at the EU on this, on BioWeek a number of years ago. So, but there's huge economic benefit to the landowner because he's not engaged in having day-to-day management. The system, once set up, is virtually self-managing, if done properly. And the other joy, if you like, is the biodiversity that emerges, not just dragonflies, the whole range of water-dependent aquatic life, including birds, mammals. We have otters, visiting our systems. So, it's fully comprehensive. So there we are.
Thank you, Rory. Thank you so much. You did that was super interesting. And for those who would want to read a little bit more about these integrated constructed wetlands, Rory has actually published many papers about it, and also I did share the link at FESI Environmental. So if you want to read more about it, check out the link. We only have 9 minutes left, and I do realize that we haven't been able to address many questions, but I knew this was going to be the problem with only an hour. However, the one thing I did want to ask, and maybe I will ask Yannick first and Miguel first, and then Rory I'll ask you to go second. Oh, I'll do Yannick, Miguel, and then Rory about that. What do you think are the highest costs and biggest challenges for improving water resilience in agriculture or with what in your landscape? And how do you think EU policy actors or other or external organizations, let's say, could support this work more in terms of providing certain type of funding or providing certain type of access to resources that you're currently lacking, but that could really improve what you're doing?
Yeah. So when we talk about water resilience measures, we often talk about, for example, ground covers, which in our area, and that is not everywhere the case, but in the south of Spain, in our area, it's always a competition with the crop in the drylands. What does that mean? That means that if we implement them, our yield will be lower, but we are expected to implement them. We, of course, want to. Not everyone does. So there has to be some type of mechanism to make that worthwhile, because if the yield gets even lower in an area that is already, in a way, subsistence farming, then maybe we cannot make ends meet. So someone has to pay, and the farmer is definitely not capable in this area to pay for that type of thing. Another thing that I think is happening, and that is a big cost, and that is not really yet thought of much, is that when we think about water infiltration and water capture in forms of, let's say, ponds and stuff like that, what happens with the subsidies that we get? They go down, because the moment that we, let's say, dig a 50 square meter hole or something more, that goes out of our basic payment. So we have a cost that we pay because we find this important, and then we get basically punished for doing that by that being taken out of our basic payment. So I think when we think about, okay, there has to be, a lot has to be done on farm level, we have to also make sure that it is not only the farmer that has to pay for all of that. And we are totally okay with digging all of these ponds, and that is something that we do, and we do see the results, but it has a cost, and in a way it has a double cost. So I would definitely say to policymakers, even though I understand in Europe it's very difficult to make policy because it is different everywhere, context is really important, and we do have to take it into account.
Thanks, Yannick. Very, very well said. Miguel Angel, do you have anything else to add, also from a landscape perspective, or from your point of view?
I agree with Yannick, and I think too that European Commission can support agricultural work in this area, asking us for information, for advisor, what is the necessary, because an organization for Alvelal know work in the territory and know the necessary of the farm. And we can design together with European Commission plan for development and implementation infrastructure to resilient the water. For example, soil, crop, terrace, pond, infiltration ditches, a lot of infrastructure with co-financiation, European Commission with the farmer. Not only financiation full, but maybe this time a fund to implementation this infrastructure.
Thank you. And Rory, do you have anything to add to that? From the perspective
it's very simple. And this is what surprises me, that it hasn't moved. As I said, we've nearly 200 of these systems working for the mining industry, moving for industry, but mainly for agriculture. And the thing that matters most is demonstrating success. And we haven't had a failure, not one failure in the many years that we've been at it, because we use land for the purpose that it is appropriately applied. When you apply land for water treatment, there are many benefits. And economically, as I said earlier, about 1% of a farm given over in this part of the country where we have heavy rain, we're talking about a meter 20, meter 40 millimeters, or 1 meter 40 per year. This is heavy rain. We have very wet conditions even today. So the reality is, how do we manage that? Because, and again, another factor here is sloping land. Water drives the nutrients down to the receiving waters, the streams and the rivers and lakes. So by putting in and halting the flow, it alone helps. But most importantly, when it's done to those factors that we have worked towards understanding over many years. And it's there, it's all in the literature. Just look up integrated constructed wetlands and you will get it. There's even a guidance document available that was primarily oriented for agriculture, but it works across other areas as well. So yeah, this is nothing new. And what surprises me is that it's taken so long to see it implemented. Somebody mentioned earlier there that, you know, there are different management systems in the various European countries, but all are subject to the same principles of water management. I don't know if that gets the point across. Demonstration. If I was to put just one word, demonstration.
Thank you, Rory. All right, we have 2 minutes left, and I just wanted to thank you three for joining this very short event. But I hope that the people who joined this webinar can take away that there are really a lot of people who are working towards improving water management and water resilience in Europe, and that yeah, the aim was really also to provide some visibility to those people who are working on it. So I provided lots of links here to Alvelal. Miguel Angel, he also is a researcher at the University of Almeria, so he has published lots of papers on this. Yannick also just shared the Regeneration Academy. They do courses also on regenerative agriculture, and a lot of this also has to do with water resilience. And I also mentioned that Rory has published lots of papers on this, and also that I shared Vessi Environmental or vessinbiro.com. That's the company he founded that works on integrated constructed wetlands. And yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. You did mention Miguel Angel also, and I think Yannick, you also mentioned this, that it is very important for different actors to come together and collaborate also, or to ask the people who are actually doing the work, who are working on the ground, the farmers, the local communities that understand their regions, to see what kind of rules and regulations and policies are actually beneficial for them to adapt and to make changes, or etc. So I'm just saying this because it's a good segue to our event on Wednesday, where we'll be talking to, again, a representative from Ireland and a representative from Spain on how we can how multi-stakeholder collaborations, or basically how collaborating with different people in a landscape and internally and also externally to achieve landscape restoration and water resilience. So that's on Wednesday. I just put it into the chat. So for those who want to join, you're more than welcome. And again, thank you, Yannick. Thank you, Rory. Thank you, Miguel Angel, for joining. That was very,
Thank you. It was really nice to see you again.
It was very nice to